Before the video actually begins, I do want to say, because I didn't mention it in the script, most of this footage is going to be taking place from my original playthrough of Monster Hunter Rise. I recorded my first time hunting basically all the new monsters. This was when I decided to main the low rank throughout my first experience of the story mode with Hunting Horn. So I was still kind of getting used to the mechanics, experimenting with different things. So you will see me using like the Palamute quite frequently, as well as the Silk Bind moves quite a bit. Anywho, to the actual script. Well, it's almost been a year now since the release of Rise, and I believe it's safe to say that the main updates have all come out at this point. Mostly, we'll get to that. And potentially, unexpectedly, it's become one of the most divisive games in the series. So here I am to throw my own 2 cents about how I feel about this game. We shall take a look at both the good and the bad. I do want to express that I'm taking a look at Rise from the perspective of someone who's played the original Monster Hunter, 3U, 4U, Gen U, and World, with 4th Gen still being my favorite generation of the series. Sunbreak is on the horizon, and I think it's important to discuss what Rise did well, what it did poorly, and what I hope to see improved with the expansion and future of the Monster Hunter games. I don't know how much people will agree with my perspective, but hey, let's do this. Part 1. The story. To begin with, let's get one of the worst parts of Rise out of the way, and that's the story. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and act like the stories of these games have been anything amazing. However, Rise still fails to hit the bare minimum I expect from a Monster Hunter game. I'll be nice and say that the NPCs of Kimura Village do have a level of charm and community to them that I appreciate. You can chat with the villagers to get a feel of the culture and its people, as well as the backstory for characters who even provide services. Rondine, of course, being one of the big ones. And while everyone else was fawning over the 2 Wyverian girls, I was more amused with the gossip feline in your house, and the lazy doctor. It's a fun place to explore and has this cozy feeling that I find to be very welcoming. So the village is pretty nice. The story of the Rampage though? Well, the most interesting part to me is the weird connection Hinoa and Minoto have with the Elder Dragons, who in of themselves are some kind of power couple. Kind of. But it felt like their connection to the Rampage phenomenon is kind of tenuous. Maybe I wasn't paying the greatest attention, which is very possible. It's just that these elders didn't leave much of an impact for me. The designs are neat and unique, the build-up for Ibushi really isn't too bad, and they have a cool fight. I think it comes down to the Rampage feeling more like a gimmick rather than a well-integrated part of the story that creates the disconnect for me. It also doesn't help that the village story is incredibly lackluster and, for me, fails at setting up its flagship monster. This is the biggest sin in my eyes, as past Monster Hunter games have done such a great job at building up their respective flagships. At best, Magnamalo pops up in a cutscene before you hunt it, and that's it. I'll be fair and compare it mostly to Cross and Double Cross, aka Generations and Generations Ultimate, as both those games were developed by the same team. But Generations builds up its 4 flagship monsters so much better. They each get a gathering quest that they appear in at an earlier point in the game. This acts as a nice surprise for the hunter, as one moment you're mining for a fossil, and suddenly, oh crap, there's Glavenus, and all I have is Kutku armor. That's such a great way to build up the monster, and is a trend I really enjoy in the series. Nergigante, Lagiacrus, Valstrax, and Gore Magala all do this in their respective games, and even have a moment where you can hunt them before given the proper quest where you hunt them for real, just to get a hint of their power. And Monster Hunter Rise fails at this. In fact, it seems to just streamline as quickly as possible through its story. Many of the quests felt like most of them didn't have anything to do with protecting the village, and I felt the story was lacking in the theme of working with and respecting nature. Not to mention, the Rampage aspect shows up so rarely I forgot it was supposed to be an important part of the plot. So ultimately, I don't like the story of Rise. Part 2. Gameplay. The structure of the game is no different from older Monster Hunter titles. There are village quests that act as the main single player mode, and hub quests which are meant for multiplayer. Though the quests themselves do scale now depending on how many people are in a hunt. One change would be key quests, as there really aren't any. Instead, you have a selection of highlighted quests that, if you complete, will allow you to further progress in the game. I get why this is a good thing, and why people might not like the old key quest system, but I'm actually not a fan of how they went about this. A vast majority of the quests are hunting quests, with a lack of gathering or capturing quests being more mandatory. Then again, the game itself puts less emphasis on the importance of gathering and hunting preparations. We'll get to that later though. You have the usual facilities for forging new weapons and armor. Returning features I really like include seeing a weapon's whole upgrade branch and keeping the wish list system, which is really great for keeping track of the equipment you are working on without having to go to the smithy all the damn time. This is very much a personal thing, but I like how armor sets in low rank actually have good skills that are often level 2 or 3, not so many strictly level 1 skills. Removing armor set skill bonuses I think was a fantastic choice, as now armor pieces are better for mixing and all sets feel like they serve a purpose rather than only some being made special. I'm pretty sure there is still technically a bonus to wearing a whole armor set, but it's just an elemental resistance boost, so it's quite negligible. Won't lie, I do think they should bring back negative skills to give armor sets a more interesting pros and cons system. But if they never bring that feature back, it won't kill me. Trading in materials for scraps to make palico and palamute equipment is great as well. One thing I really hate is the return of armor spheres point system, as I find it very tedious. I think the previous system was better, as you only needed one sphere per piece, and the type of sphere is dependent on the armor piece's grade and level. This also encourages mining more, and I don't think I've gotten a single armor sphere from mining in the game, and that kinda sucks. Back to a positive, this game added dogs! Palamutes are freaking awesome, kind of. Okay, in terms of skills, they are lacking compared to palicos, as palamutes are mostly there to ride as a faster way to travel. And it is fun to ride them, though I don't use them too often, as they are more limited in their movement when it comes to deeper exploration of the maps. I just really love having a dog run around with me, so please Capcom, let me keep them. Huskies are just the best. Besides, you can have both a palico and a palamute with you, or 2 of each, which is neat. Speaking of running around on maps, wire bugs. In terms of acting as a hookshot jump option and being great for climbing up walls, I love it. Your hunter is more mobile now, as they have more complex movement for navigating around the map, which feeds into my sense of exploration. Don't get me wrong, it took some time to get used to the controls, but they have become second nature for me now. Though, don't think the wire bug is perfect, because I will also be complaining about it later. If you want to get better with a weapon, there is a well-constructed training area. You can also turn on damage numbers. I turn these off because it just looks weird to me seeing the damage values pop up in Monster Hunter. Should you need more resources, palicos and palamutes can be sent out to trade in their subs or do their own quests to gain some special materials. Lastly, I want to talk about the multiplayer before getting into the maps, monsters, and hunting mechanics. Personally, this is actually one of my favorite games in the series to play with others. The fact that everyone can run around with each other in the village is really cool, as you no longer need to be locked to just the gathering hub. Now you're free to mess around and goof off more with your friends. Plus, this gathering hub is nice and cozy, has great colors, fun characters, and a cute little restaurant. I wish there were some mini games to play with my friends, like Where's My Arm Wrestling Barrel, Capcom? But hunts are easy to post and join even when someone is in the middle of a hunt, which is a great feature for new players who might not know how to properly join a quest at the hub, like how my friend and I didn't when we first played 4U together. Yes, it would be nice to have more people in a hub, but being able to show my friends the photos I took of the best snake in the Flood Forest brings me so much joy. There are a couple downsides, however. One major one is that now in multiplayer, everyone can bring a buddy, which at first sounds cool. The consequence to this is that when fighting smaller monsters with up to 4 hunters who can also have 4 pets, this becomes quite the clusterfuck of people hitting each other and just having a harder time seeing what the heck is even going on with a small monster. The second, local multiplayer can be finicky for some reason. There are times when my friend and I are trying to join each other's hubs and the game just won't connect, which is very unfortunate, as this becomes a really sour note to what would otherwise be a very enjoyable experience. Side note, I wish the guild cards had better customization, as I don't really like the version of these cards. No one ever seems to share them, so I guess it only matters to me. Part 3. Hunting. Before we get into the deeper stuff, let's get the gimmick out of the way first. Rampage, Monster Hunter's pseudo tower defense like mode. Well, I'm kinda mixed on this one. On one hand, I have never liked the siege-based hunts in the series. That's right, I hate Jen and Duran Moran, and other such monsters like Zora Magros and Lao Shaolun. But on the other hand, this mode is kind of fun. It feels like you have more to do by setting up different siege weapons, set automatics, others you can use as well, or setting off wyvernators, or setting up bombs. Finally, other characters will aid you by acting as special supports in the battle. There is a fair amount of strategy when you first play a Rampage, and you do have something to do constantly, like completing tasks to improve your weapons. In high rank, Apex monsters show up, which are basically deviants from Gen U. Seriously, why did they even call them Apexes, when that's a term that's already been used for specific monsters and for you? That started making people think that gore was going to be in this game, which is not the case at all. So this came off as a bit misleading unintentionally. It's a neat callback to the deviants, but I don't really care about them. Rampages would be worthwhile and something I would play a bit more often if the rewards were worth anything. Yeah, okay, you get tickets to give your weapons better Rampage skills, and there are Rampage weapons that are palette swaps of Kimura weapons. But that's it. No unique armor sets, no special weapons and armor from Apexes, and the weapon skills don't interest me that much if I'm being honest. With a lack of incentive, I never do Rampages on either my low rank or high rank file. Again, it's not as bad of a gimmick minigame-esque hunting mode as I thought it would be, and it's actually kind of fun with friends. There's just no real reason to do them though. Here we are. Time for the main event, the hunting itself. Where do I even begin? Perhaps the weapons would be a good start. One of the reasons I was looking forward to Rise was seeing the return of unique weapon designs. Heck, even old monsters got some new weapons and they look fantastic. With only a very few amount of weapons having worlds awful slapping on some skin or fur to a bone or iron weapon. Most of those, of course, being from monsters who originated in World. Many of the changes weapons received in World stayed in Rise, which is for the most part a great thing, as Bow is a more active and energetic weapon, Insect Glaive is still very mobile, Sword and Shield having the charge jump, and Hammer getting an awesome charge mechanic, just to name a few. Hunting Horn received a drastic change, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. This mostly has to do with setting up songs, made super easy, and for me, removing some of the appeal of the weapon. I would much rather see the Hunting Horn return to more of how it used to play, but just keeping a few changes. These being setting up song combos, which is pretty neat, and maybe changing the chorus playing animation. I do really like that breakdancing swing move that they have here in Rise. It's good for some mobility and for iframe dodging. Honestly, maybe just make it an option when you're playing the chorus to be able to perform this move to move while still playing the chorus. The game tries to find a balance for old Hunting Horn players with the use of switch skills. Every weapon has 2 switch skills that will change up one of your attacks. Some examples would be Lance's Charge Dash being switched out for a shorter Shield Bash, Switch Axe getting an overhead swing, Charge Blade being able to switch between putting charge into your blade or going into the Buzzsaw Axe mode. These are all fantastic. It's great having more variety for players to choose on how they want to hunt with a given weapon. And it's a concept I don't mind seeing return, cause maybe one of these new moves will make you appreciate a weapon more. However, it's not just a weapon's preset moves that get affected by switch skills. While I have praised the wire bug a while ago, it's time for one of my complaints. Admittedly, I'm not a big fan of Silkbind moves. At the cost of 1 or 2 wire bugs, every weapon can pull off a unique move, each weapon having 3 of them, with one switching out with another. These basically act like Hunter Arts from the Generations games. However, I feel like the Silkbind attacks are kind of overpowered in comparison. Hunting Horn basically has a move that pretty much lets you automatically get a monster mountable. Hammer can use its Sonic Air Swing whenever, and Longsword is just ridiculous ridiculous, having an insanely large counterattack and a move that just instantly powers the weapon up into its next spirit level at the cost of almost nothing. It's not just that some of these moves can do a lot of damage or even having great benefits that makes them overpowered. The resource they take from, the Wider Bug, doesn't take too long to refill, and there is no skill in this as opposed to building up your hunter arts in Gen U. In addition to that, a vast amount of monsters aren't made with these skills in mind, so there's a lack of balance. Hunters in general are more mobile and stronger than ever before, and way too many of the monsters can't keep up. Really, it's only the Apex Elders and a few high tier monsters who can put up much of a challenge. With the use of Wider Bugs, hunters can recover from being hit and have more mobility in the air. Monsters simply don't have enough new moves to deal with this, and it doesn't even end there. Hunters can move when healing, ride a Palamute to heal or sharpen their weapon, or even just to get out of an area with little difficulty. And there are these special birds to boost up their stats. Because of this, in my low rank file, the file I play the most, I have personally restricted myself from not moving while healing, not riding the Palamute, avoid using those birds as much as I can, not using Silkbind moves, never upgrading my armor, not to use demon drugs or armor skins or even hold power or armor charms, and not even to use the new wyvern riding. Keep in mind, a lot of these things I've done in previous games because I didn't feel like I was too overpowered when doing so. Monsters just aren't as strong in this game's low rank compared to previous titles like Gen U and 3U. To be fair, all previous Monster Hunter games I have played have a similar issue of lower tier monsters having a vast health and damage gap compared to higher tier monsters, no matter the rank. I wish the series as a whole would make lower and higher tier monsters closer in their attack and health values, and make weapons and armor more balanced in return. I think higher tier monsters should be given more challenging moves and status effects to make them harder than lower tier monsters. I think this could also make lower tier monsters equipment still more effective for a later game of high or low rank, but that's just a change I want to see. Seriously, go back and play 3U and get yourself some high tier monster equipment in low rank, like Rathalos or Duramboros equipment, and then fight an Arzuros and watch it die in seconds. It's sad. Alright, wyvern riding. Okay, the idea of riding a monster is super cool, and doing monster fights with friends is really neat, but I really prefer mounting more. This is just another mechanic that removes the threat of monsters, especially when another monster shows up in the hunt. Instead of it being a scary moment where you might be attacked by two monsters, it becomes a moment of free wyvern ride and only acts as an advantage in your situation, and also starts to get really boring to me. If you want to keep wyvern riding, I get it, but I think this should be restricted to only occurring if you use one of those special spiders. That would definitely reward those who choose to gather endemic life better. Maybe we should talk about endemic life for a bit. Well, it's a shame we can't catch them anymore and have them as pets in our houses. For the most part, I do like many of them for setting up traps, giving some extra heals, and inflicting monsters with statuses. Those colorful birds, however, I don't really care for. Depending on the petal lace you are wearing, will determine the max level of boost you can receive from these birds. They are everywhere, and it's tough to avoid them. On top of that, for some stupid reason, they remove a set of items in this game because of these birds. You can still use and make demon drugs and armor skins, but none of the nutrients. Why? Why can't we just have an option to not wear the petal lace and instead choose to rely more on our own resources and items? I don't know if this is just me, but it feels like resource gathering is really mitigated in this game. You never really need to get meat or cook it yourself when you have the Dongo shop. Many of the mushrooms aren't as useful since potions are made with just herbs, and things like drugged meat don't feel very needed because of how quickly monsters die. I don't even know very many monsters that go after drugged meat. I've tried it multiple times, nothing. There's a good range of items for recovering status effects, but not a lot of the monsters have very effective ways of inflicting you with them. Plus, Palicos can recover anything, even when they aren't healing Palicos. I just wish the game put more focus on gathering in maps, and give monsters some more unique features and attacks for utilizing more items. Most of the time, you only need Mega Potions, which heal an extreme amount of health now, some traps, and bombs, and not much else. Especially since whetstones are infinite, and you don't need to buy things like pickaxes and bug nets. Here's the thing, I could be more forgiving of that, minus the pedal lace thing, if the game made one major change. And it's time to talk about the monsters. Now, it may sound like I don't like the monsters in this game, but that is not the case. Many of the monsters just aren't made to keep up better with the hunters, which is a problem for game balance. I love a lot of these new monsters like Tedanaron, Somnicanth, and my favorite, Amudron. Returning monsters are great to see as well, such as Great Roggy, Barioth, and Zinogre, some of whom receive new moves. This is by far my favorite version of Rathalos in the series. That flamethrower move is cool as hell. These monsters are really fun to hunt, and to add to that, the maps are vast improvements compared to Worlds. They have logical layouts, are very readable, areas aren't useless or tedious to get to, and traversing them is so much less of a headache as opposed to the ancient forest in World. I hated that map and got annoyed with some of the more frustrating areas to navigate in the Coral Highlands and the Rotten Vale, even though I like those two maps. I want more maps like the ones we have in Rise, and not the ones we got in World. To be fair, World did a couple of great things immensely better than Rise. First up, tracking monsters. Yes, Scoutflies suck, but with Rise's maps, they wouldn't be necessary. Having the ability to find tracks, leftover carcasses, or markings to get an idea of where a monster is located was a fantastic and immersive idea from World. Now sure, once you have leveled up your info on a monster high enough, you never need to track them because they will automatically show up on your map. I say remove that. Keep the hunter's notes with the info on monsters' weaknesses and materials they drop, but make them something you always have to track when hunting, and only get an idea of where a monster is after you've seen it or done enough tracking. After all, you're supposed to be a hunter, and tracking a mark is a part of hunting. Not to mention, this game already has monsters spawning in different locations even when replaying the same quest, which is great and would really help add to this tracking concept. Cahoots are cute and I do love them, I just wish they didn't reveal all the monsters on a map right away. Maybe only have them keep an eye on one monster at a time after you have located it. That's the kind of change I want to see. The second thing World did great with its monsters is making them feel like living, breathing creatures. In Rise, you can be no more than like 30 feet from a monster, and in seconds, they just straight up attack you. This is really stupid. World didn't do this nearly as often. Instead, monsters had behaviors they would display, like Agenath basking in perching spots, Geratodus hunting, and Apsaros traveling in herds and creating protective rings when predators showed up. Rise does have unique animations, like Magnamalo sharpening its claws, and Somnicanth singing to itself, but I never get to enjoy these due to monsters immediately starting fights with hunters when they get so close. Yeah, there are still a fair amount of monsters in World who just straight up attack you, but I love the moments of watching these creatures interact with their environment and other creatures so much more. I just want to see the monsters treated more like animals rather than just boss fights for both Sunbreak and future titles, especially in expedition maps. Make the monsters feel like living creatures by giving them unique animation triggers and schedules like watching them go get a drink, hunt for prey, defending their meals from smaller monsters, and marking territory or checking on their nests. Turf wars could stick around, but be used more to show how different creatures interact with each other when they cross paths, rather than just powerhouse fights. Rise is still a super fun game and has introduced me to my new favorite way to play Monster Hunter. That's just straight up going on expedition maps. As monsters randomly spawn here, you get to explore these maps and you can just continually do some fun hunts, and it just feels like a much more immersive experience. Heck, one of the ways I do it is something I call survival mode, where I remove all items and only rely on the items and materials I gather in the map to keep myself engaged and more intelligent about where things are on the map. I have to make potions, make well done steaks, try to hide from monsters when things get too scary. It's really fun. It's also a way that encourages me to use endemic life a lot more often too. Conclusion. In the end, while I have a fair amount of issues with Rise, it's still my favorite game of the 5th generation. Unique weapon designs return, armor sets are better for mixing in my opinion, cool new monsters, and fun returning monsters. Switch skills are a great way to expand on weapons, and these are my favorite open maps. So yes, I still really enjoy this game and go back to it pretty frequently. I do hope the series embraces more of the hunting mechanics in terms of gathering items, using your environment wisely, and tracking monsters rather than just becoming all about the fights. I don't really know what to expect when it comes to Sunbreak, as I hope it makes some changes to the base game like how Iceborne and Gen Ultimate did. Okay, to be fair, this script has been in the making for quite some time, so with the most recent update about Rise, I know it will be doing that kind of changes. What changes we'll get, I'm not 100% certain. Certainly some new switch skills for weapons, but beyond that, I don't really know. But hey, the new monsters look cool, minus that gorilla Durambros looking thing, and the brand new map seems really neat. I also kinda hoped that we would have gotten a single player high rank story mode, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Oh well. Anywho, yes, Rise is really fun and I very much enjoy the game. You all take care and have fun playing whatever Monster Hunter game you enjoy most. Catch you all next time.